As you heard during the newscast, this issue on property taxes has become somewhat controversial, albeit I want to add that you've got people in both parties who realize something needs to be done. And so you've got both Democrats and Republicans. And when you get that much agreement, at least that something needs to be done, not necessarily agreement on what needs to be done, it does tell you there will be some action. And we're spending some time this morning with House Majority Leader Mike Moyle, a Republican representative here in Idaho. And he is the man, really, the driving force behind all of this in the House. When there's, as you just heard, the bill is now on its way to the Senate, and we spoke yesterday with Kelly Anthony from the Senate side, who was simply just awaiting the bill, and then we'll see what happens now at this point. Bill Colley with you too on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 6 minutes after 7 o'clock, and we're at 21. And Representative, welcome to our program.
Thanks, Bill. It's good to be with you this morning.
We were just talking off air, and I mean, you're aware, obviously, that not everyone is going to be happy with this. And
no.
I give you credit for keeping a good sense of humor about all of it. But crisis, in fact, I think last week somebody was posting a video. You were speaking at a hearing on this issue. And I sat down, I watched the remarks. And you obviously made it clear that it's worse in some places in the state, and in some places it may not be an issue. But you got to find a way at least to get a handle on it in those crisis areas.
Well, exactly, and you do really, when you kind of talk about property taxes, you have two Idahos. You have some areas that are pretty stagnant. The county commissioners are doing a really good job of preventing those shifts toward the property tax owners because they know their owners are struggling. And you have other areas where the growth is just totally out of control. The budgets and taxes are screaming up, and there is no control. So, yeah, you've got two Idahos, and that's the hard part when you talk about property taxes because not one size fits all.
When we say a freeze, I mean, I know that the system and how this is all put together. I have a friend, he does assessments, and there's a formula that goes into all of this. But I guess this would not be described as a moratorium. Maybe even freeze isn't the right word. What is it that you specifically are looking to do?
Well, what this bill does is it basically freezes the property tax portion of a taxing district's budget. Now, taxing districts get money from the state sales tax. They get money from, if you're in a city and they write a ticket, they get 90% of the fees and fines on that. They get money from all kinds of different areas. And what this basically does is freezes the property tax portion. Now, listen, and it's not a total freeze, and it doesn't mean your taxes are going to go down. If you're in a growing area, they'll have the occupancy tax come in, and that's if there's a house built during that year in which the property tax portion is froze. And so there'll be revenues that come that way, and there'll be revenues on the other side of the ledger that come into. And to give you an example, most counties it's about 40 to 45% of their budgets on average, and I say average because they're different. And most cities are 20 to 21%, and they're different too. And that's the hard part when you talk about property taxes. Everyone's a different issue. But with the growth in property taxes where you've got folks being forced out of their homes for no action of their own other than somebody build a subdivision behind their home, it's not right. And so somehow we've got to slow this down and find a solution. And that is the intent of the bill. Slow things down. There's another bill coming through for an interim committee to study the issue and see if we can find a solution where we don't hurt those that are doing it right, but slow down those that are out of control with their budgets.
In fact, you mentioned the people being forced out. I think you put a human face on it in those remarks last week where you mentioned a woman, I guess you've known her all of your life, and it looks as if she could be turned out of her home.
Yeah, she's a widow lady. I grew up with her and some of her kids, and her husband passed away a while back where they built a big, huge subdivision behind her house, and now she's in a situation where her value has gone way up. Taxes have gone way up, and when you're on a fixed income, it's an issue. But it's not just the elderly; it's the young family on the bottom end who's trying to start out with children, and they're in the same financial, living from paycheck to paycheck. It makes it difficult. So it's not just the elderly, but her story stuck with me pretty bad because when you got somebody that's that emotional and that worried about losing a home she's lived in for as long as I've known her, so that's 50, 60 years, it's a sad deal, and we should not be letting that happen.
Wanted to mention just quickly, we're at 10 minutes after 7 o'clock, and it's 21. State Representative Mike Moyle, who's the House Majority Leader, joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com with Bill Colley. I had a chance to talk to a county commissioner, just earlier this week, who said what this might do, the only thing he thinks that people in his county would notice would be there might be, he said, some longer lines at the local DMV because it might put pressure on them as they have to staff that. But this is I don't know that would happen over 1 year. This would have to be something that would the impact would have to be much longer than a year of some sort of freeze, right, before that would happen.
Well, I don't know their budgets, and I know that there's some that are concerned. But remember, we're trying to say whatever you had last year in property tax revenues, operate on those for a year while we try to find a solution. So we're not cutting their budgets. We're just trying to say, hey, let's just freeze things in line and make things work. It's our farm last year. A lot of the commodity prices were down on the stuff that we grow here, and so we're going to make some reductions. We're not asking for reductions in this bill. We're just saying just where you were last year for 1 year only, stay right there. Let's see if we could get an interim committee and figure out how to solve the problem, because it is a problem in some areas and not others. And the intention is not to harm them. It's just to slow down the growth while we figure out how to fix it.
But again, there probably have been some, and I don't know about many in this part of southern Idaho, but there probably have been some governments at city and county level that have been a bit on the irresponsible side, and they'll have to learn to be a little bit more responsible.
Well, and that's a true statement. Some of the areas on this where we're at over on this end of the state, when you've got budgets growing at 14, 15% just on the property tax side, and you throw in everything else, it's that's not sustainable. And if the economy slows down, they're going to be in the same box anyway. So I think there's a way to solve this if everybody will come to the table. The counties, by the way, have been very responsive. We've had a lot of meetings. They've done a really good job of trying to find a solution. They've come up with ideas. Some of the other taxing districts, it's just been, Moyle's a ding dong, whatever, and we don't want to play ball. We don't have to. But this is a concern. If you look at Idaho's history, in 1978, when the 1% initiative passed, which is very similar to Prop 13 in California, they capped the property tax portions of the taxing district's budget at 1% growth, and they tax the value of property at 2% a year. If you go down that road, we will harm some of our local governments that are providing services we want. So you can go both extremes, and if the legislature and our friends in the cities and counties can't sit down in other taxing districts and find a solution, the taxpayers will do it to us. They've done it before with initiatives, and I assure you they will do it again.
Well, that's the thing. There could be multiple Howard Jarvises in Idaho, those type of people who would come forward on their own and decide they're going to take this over. I don't think anybody in state government wants that to happen.
Well, I don't either, and I think that's the part that kind of bothers me about this issue altogether. I'm not trying to hurt them. You would think I was if you'd listened to the hearing all the way the other day, and all those against it were only cities and counties. It wasn't the taxpayers. All had good examples of why we needed to do something. But if we're not careful and work together to find a solution, just like you said, somebody's going to do it to us, and somebody's going to step up. And I guarantee you, even areas of this state where they don't have a problem, the voters will support it. They are not happy about property taxes. It's fundamentally wrong to tax somebody because they own ground. In fact, it's one of the things that made this country great was the ability to own ground, and now we tax you to where you can't afford it. One of the comments that's really stuck with me came from my father when he said, you really never own your ground because there's a lien against it for every bond issue and every taxing district in the area, and it shouldn't be that way.
We've got to get to a short break, but we want to mention Representative Moyle is going to spend a few more minutes with us today, but we've got the Ag Report on the way in just a moment. That's coming up at 7:15, and we'll check the weather, too. Bill Cawley with you on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I got to tell you, when I got into work this morning, it was 21. We reached 27 briefly, and I thought we're going to go in that direction throughout the morning, but that's not the case. We're at 18. And I'm sure I'll get a message or two from Camas County this morning that tells me it's below zero likely. We've got more on the way in just a couple of minutes.